In 1955, Walt Disney realized his dream of creating a theme park for families to come together. Fast forward 65 years, and that dream has expanded to 12 Disney theme parks all across the globe in America, Europe, and Asia. Today, we're taking a look at these parks and ranking them. Hi guys, Gio here from Independent Guides, and today we're taking a look at all the Disney theme parks across the world, and in my opinion, how they stack up against each other. So this is all personal opinion, of course, and everything is subjective. I have visited all of these parks myself, and also I've worked as a cast member at both Walt Disney World at Magic Kingdom and at Disneyland Paris at Disneyland Park, so bear that in mind as it might influence my rankings a bit. Also, these rankings are based on the parks today, at the end of 2020, and not on any future expansions which are coming. For me to rank all of these, I've taken into account the attractions, the theming, the customer service and the magic, and the food when rating these. Plus, just my overall feel for the atmosphere of the park. I'm also super curious to hear your opinions as well, so please let me know your thoughts in the comments. We'll start off from the bottom then. The worst Disney theme park in the world at number 12 is Walt Disney Studios Park at Disneyland Paris. So this won't come as a surprise to most Disney fans, as it's widely agreed that the Studios Park is, well, rubbish. Walt Disney Studios was built in a rush when it opened in 2002, and Disney opened it as a half-day park, so the studios didn't need to wow guests, it just needed to get them to spend money on a hotel. It opened with only a handful of attractions, and despite lots of expansions over the years, somehow this is still a half-day park. As far as attractions are concerned, the standout rides here are Crusher's Coaster, Ratatouille, Tower of Terror, and maybe RC Racer and the Toy Soldier Parachute. There are some other minor attractions and shows, but the park relies too much on standard flat rides with things like Aladdin's Flying Carpet, Slinky Dog, the Cars Spinner ride. The other thing it also has is Mickey and the Magician, which is an excellent show. Sadly, the park lacks unique attractions. Only Crusher's Coaster is really that unique. So the result is that you can do all the major rides in extra magic hours and then do another few minor attractions in the first few hours of park opening, watch Mickey and the Magician, and be done by lunchtime. Theming wise, the park is dire. The front lot areas you come into the park doesn't look too bad, but then you have to go into Studio One, you walk through this massive show building to the other side. I'd much rather they just built a Main Street style entrance here or something like Buena Vista Street and knock down the building. I don't think that the studio's theme has ever really worked. It's just a cheap way of saying we don't need to build out, we can keep it basic, let's make things flat instead of 3D, because that's how studios are. There are a few nice bits of theming. I like the Ratatouille area, I like the Toy Story Playland area, and the Tower of Terror, and there's this little section in front of it, it's also quite nice, but there is no flow, the areas need to be linked together, it doesn't work. The park also needs more kinetic elements. It needs some water, it needs some fountains, it needs moving attractions, it needs things for you to look at. It needs more atmosphere, it needs more live music, it needs a parade, it needs characters outside and not just indoors. And yes, this is all meant to happen. There's going to be a new lake, there's going to be new land, there's going to be a brand new walkway, there's going to be new attractions, but it's not there in 2020. As far as the feeling of magic, there is none, full stop. The park is ugly. Nothing about this park transports you into a different world, and the customer service at the park is the same as it is across Disneyland Paris, which is indifferent. The cast members, they're not rude, but for the most part, they're not going to go out of their way to help you either. There are a lot of fantastic cast members, but unfortunately it's not the case for the majority. For most of the people working there, this is just a job, and you're constantly reminded of that as a guest. For foreign travellers, a positive of the park is that everyone's level of English is certainly good enough or excellent. You won't have any issues if you don't speak French. And finally for the park, the food. It's very much your standard theme park fare everywhere. It's burgers and chips. If you're a snack person, there's basically nothing. There's also very few places to eat at the moment. You have one quite big quick service in Studio One as you come in, and then you have the table service restaurant, Bistro Chez Remy, in the Ratatouille area, where the theming is great, but the food is just fine. It's not particularly good value for money. I think it's actually quite expensive. The menu's very limited, and it's just disappointing as France in general is excellent for their food, usually at very fair prices, so there is the potential to make these things better. Next up at number 11, Hong Kong Disneyland. So this actually pains me to put a Magic Kingdom style park this low down the list, but it has to go somewhere, And unfortunately, there just isn't much of a reason to go to this park in the first place, let alone go back to it after you've been to it for a day. It is better than Walt Disney Studios Paris, much better, and it's sad because this is one of Disney's newest parks. It opened in 2005, but it was built like Walt Disney Studios Park in Paris at a time where Disney built things that were just good enough, and they didn't try to exceed their guest expectations. The park tried to clone the original Disneyland in Anaheim as much as possible, down to the castle, although this is being changed at the moment. Thankfully today there are some original rides, but there's very few. You have Mystic Manor, you have Big Grizzly Mountain Runaway Minecarts, which both excellent, and you have Ant-Man and the Wasp Nano Battle, but this is very similar to Buzz Lightyear, and you have Iron Man Experience, but this is essentially a rethemed Star Tours. So really, if you take away the fact that those last two are rethemes, they are elaborate rethemes, but they are rethemes, you have two original attractions, and they're both great. But for most people, going to do a roller coaster and one dark ride doesn't warrant making a special trip and going out of your way to visit this park. If you're a Disney fan, yes, of course, go for it. The park also has some good shows to help fill the day, but you really have to take things at a slow pace to fill a whole day here, or you have to prepare to do absolutely everything. The other thing is that the park is very, very quiet compared to other Disney parks. Even on extremely busy days, the maximum wait time is an hour. Most days, everything's under 15 minutes. Even the big headliner attractions, if you look at the visitor figures for this park, they're tiny. I do like the fact that Fast Pass basically doesn't exist in this park, except for on a couple of rides. That makes things just much easier, keeps the queues down. And it's definitely a park that you can just turn up and do whatever you want at a relaxed pace. You don't need to get there for park opening. And so I am going to give it plus points for that. Strangely though, the lack of crowds does make the park feel a bit lacking in atmosphere. I never thought I'd say I wanted more people in the theme park, but I kind of do for Hong Kong Disneyland. In terms of theming, it's very similar to the original Disneyland. I'm personally not a fan of Tomorrowland in the American parks, or here, or in Tokyo. I much prefer Shanghai's and Paris's, so I do wish that they change that now, but I can see why they won't. They've got Shanghai not too far away. Customer service everywhere was great, and for a foreign tourist, of course, it gets plus points for the level of English, which is not a barrier here. Unlike in Shanghai or Tokyo, you'll get on completely fine with English just as you do at Disneyland Paris. And the other thing is the feeling of magic. There is a little bit of a feeling of magic in the park. It is a castle style park, which I think always helps. And the cast members, they do try really hard, much more so than studios in Paris. And lastly, the food. I think there was a good variety here. Hong Kong Disneyland has a tough job because it gets visitors from all over the world. It's not just locals, so it really tries to give a mix of cuisines. There are a couple of table service places, but it is mainly quick service and snacks. I was really impressed by the food actually, and the quality and the portion sizes, both at Explorers Club Restaurant and Royal Banquet Hall, especially if you want to try something a little bit different from your standard theme park fare. Honestly, I'm not very adventurous with food, and I got to try some really nice Asian food here. There is potential to turn it around. Paris has been a really good example of that. It took 25 years, but the resort has started to turn a profit again after a lot of investment. At number 10 is EPCOT. The first time I visited EPCOT, I was blown away. It was unlike any other Disney park I'd ever seen. But as the years have gone on, the park seems to not have moved with the times, not have adapted, and it's starting to feel quite stale and old, I think. As far as attractions go, there are certainly a lot of original attractions. You have Journey into Imagination, Spaceship Earth, The Seas with Nemo and Friends, Mission Space, Living with the Land, Frozen Ever After. Soarin' is great, but it can be seen in California, in Tokyo, in Shanghai, so it's hardly unique. And Test Track is excellent, but the other parks that use this ride system with Radiator Springs Racers and Journey to the Center of the Earth, both of these are better rides. Mission Space I think is excellent. It's very intense, so I can't personally do it more than once or twice on a trip. World Showcase as a concept and execution is excellent. I'll give it 10 out of 10 for that. Frozen Ever After is fantastic. The Mexican boat ride is fine, but it's not incredible. And none of the other shows at the other pavilions are mind-blowing. They're cute distractions, but nothing is incredible. Ratatouille is going to help the France Pavilion, but again, it's not open yet, so that doesn't count. Also, it's not an amazing ride, to be honest. And of course, Illuminations, the nighttime show, is now gone. Theming-wise, I think Future World feels very dated throughout, and the park does have a lot of very, very poor queues. Things like Soarin', The Seas with Nemo and Friends, Living with the Land, they're just empty corridors and switchbacks, which honestly is shambolic. I think World Showcase is fantastic theming wise though in comparison. Customer service wise, I think this is pretty standard across the board Walt Disney World. It's good, it's not incredible, but I do find that at EPCOT, the World Showcase representatives are fantastic across the board. In terms of a feeling of magic, it's tough. It's not on a par with Magic Kingdom. I don't even think it's on a par with Hong Kong Disneyland, but I think that the park doesn't aim to be magical, so I can't really criticize it for that. And then finally, for food, this is, for me, hands down the best Disney park in the world for food overall. All I need to say is World Showcase, Food and Wine Festival, Flower and Garden Festival. I think, for me, the Japan Pavilion, France, Italy and Canada are especially good for food at this park.
At number 9 is Disney's Hollywood Studios. So I surprised myself with this one, to be honest, but Disney's Hollywood Studios was always my least favourite park at Walt Disney World, but the park's been through a lot and so much for transformation in the last 3 years. Attractions wise, it might now have the strongest lineup of all of Florida's parks, along with Magic Kingdom. You've got Rock and Roller Coaster, Tower of Terror, Slinky Dog Dash, Star Tours, Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, Toy Story Mania, Millennium Falcon, Smuggler's Run, and Rise of the Resistance. It's an incredibly impressive lineup, plus you have the shows on top of that, and the nighttime spectacular Fantasmic, which I think is Walt Disney World's second best nighttime show after Happily Ever After at Magic Kingdom. It is worth pointing out that the Star Wars attractions can all be done at Disneyland now, and also that Fantasmic and Toy Story Mania are there as well. That still leaves quite a few original attractions. I really like the street entertainment in the park, the characters are fantastic. Theming wise, this is a Studios park, but it is a big step up from Paris' Studios Park. It has Sunset Boulevard, Hollywood Boulevard, the Chinese Theatre, and Galaxy's Edge of course. Toy Story Land is also good. I would say that there are still a few odd spots, like the Echo Lake area is just weird, with Indiana Jones there, then Star Tours next door. The ABC commissary area is a bit lacking, and the part near Walt Disney Presents gives me some flashbacks from Walt Disney Studios in Paris. As far as the feeling of magic, I think it's better here than Epcot. Maybe because there are the extra characters and there's a bit of Hollywood glitz and glamour, and there are more shows with characters as well, and there's Galaxy's Edge and Tower of Terror. Those are just so in theme that they're kind of their own little magic. And then Fantasmic, which is just the most magical show. And lastly, food. So this is nowhere near the level of Epcot. It's fairly normal theme park fare for the most part. Some of it is just downright terrible, like Pizza Rizzo, which is still the worst pizza I've ever tasted. I do like the concepts of the different restaurants though, things like 50th Primetime Cafe, Ogre's Cantina, the Sci-Fi Dine-In Theatre, and there are a few good dishes, things like the Ronto Wrap at Ronto Roasters. The park also has a really good mix of the number of quick service, table service, and snack places too.
In 8th place, we have Disney's California Adventure. So this was another park that was a victim of the build it cheaply and the guests are still going to pay and come anyway era, with Hong Kong Disneyland and Walt Disney Studios Park in Paris, but the park has certainly come a long way. It has a good solid lineup of attractions and a good mix of popular attractions that can be found at other resorts, but it also has quite a few original attractions. So it has all of the Cars Land attractions, Guardians of the Galaxy, Mission Breakout, Monsters Inc., the Incredicoaster, Grizzly River Run, Goofy Sky School, there's also Frozen live at the Hyperion. As well as that, the park has a great daytime parade. It sometimes has had the nighttime parade here as well, and the nighttime show World of Color is one of my favorites. So for that alone, this park is worth visiting for most people. You can definitely fill a day here just with the original stuff, and this definitely isn't a half-day park. The service and the magic is fantastic. I think that generally across the board, both of these things are better here in California than at Walt Disney World. But California isn't on par with Disneyland for this, I think. The theming is mixed. Buena Vista Street is fantastic. Hollywood Land is good. Grizzly Peak is fine, but I can't really get over the theme of Pixar Pier. I don't think that you need to have a seaside themed area when you've got a beach down the road. Finally, as far as food is concerned, it's generally across the board good. It has some good snack options, there's a good variety of cultural food, and Cafe Circle is a great sit-down restaurant. All in all, the park is really quite solid overall, but if I had to choose between spending a day here and at any of the other Disney parks higher up on the list, I would choose the other parks, so that's why it's at number 8. Up until here, this list was fairly easy for me to draw up, but for the top 7 parks, I really had trouble putting them into order. I've spent hours moving these around, and honestly I'm still not sure. So at number 7 is Shanghai Disneyland. I'd actually initially ranked this park as number 2, and if you're going to go by pure facts and numbers about theming and rides, then this is going to be one of the top parks. But I just can't bring myself to say that it's better than the other 6 parks that are above it. So essentially with Shanghai Disneyland, the deal is this. If you want to go to Magic Kingdom style park, but you want the latest and the greatest, you don't want any nostalgia, then Shanghai Disneyland is your park. We have a full video on Shanghai Disneyland's unique attractions, which you can check out in the description. But essentially, this is a Disney park with Disney characters, but without a lot of classic Disney rides. So there's no It's a Small World, there's no Big Thunder Mountain, there's no Splash Mountain, there's no Space Mountain, there's no Frontierland, there's no Pinocchio ride, there's no Snow White's Adventures, and there's not even a proper Main Street USA. Instead, we have a park filled with unique attractions. So Pirates of the Caribbean is a boat ride mixed with simulator screens and really cool animatronics. The castle walkthrough is high tech. Space Mountain is not here, but we have Tron instead. The castle has a boat ride and a moat. Seven Dwarfs Mine Train is the park's second main coaster, and all of the lands look very different to how they do in other Magic Kingdom parks. They've even got an adventures rope course in the park. Mickey Avenue replaces Main Street USA. The hub is enormous. Treasure Cove is completely original. The Carousel and Dumbo have moved from Fantasyland into the hub in front of the castle. Fantasyland just looks completely different, and it's the same thing with Tomorrowland, which looks really, really clean and futuristic. And the park basically takes the best rides from each of the Magic Kingdoms and upgrades them. So Peter Pan's Flight here is the best that there is. It's even better than Disneyland Paris is. Buzz here is better than all the other parks as well. And on top of that, it adds all of those original rides. It even has rides that you typically wouldn't expect in a castle style park. So you've got Soarin', for example, and you've also got the Rapids ride. It also feels very modern and up to date, and it does make the other parks feel dated. This is a park that is struggling with capacity though, and it urgently needs more rides. The problem is that the park is so large that it has a high physical capacity, so it can get big crowds, and big crowds plus a low number of rides means very long waits. As far as theming is concerned, Disney has cut no corners here. Everything is supersized. The only thing I really didn't care for in this park is the castle. It's really impressive from the front, but when you look at it from the side, it's just too wide, it's too deep, it's not tall enough for how wide it is, so it looks a bit squat and out of proportion. But theming wise, that's my only complaint, honestly. Take a look at Soarin', for example, here versus the American parks. As far as magic and service, the service from the cast members I thought was excellent. The level of English is not good. It's similar to Tokyo. Most cast members speak very little or no English, but they did all know Have a Magical Day, which I thought was super cute, and hello and goodbye, but that was kind of it. The level of service was generally speaking exceptional. The cast members were smiley, they waved like they do in Japan, and whenever I needed help in English, they went and found someone that could help me. One of my really good guest experiences was when I asked at the bakery if they had Mickey waffles, and the cast member actually escorted me all the way to the other side, around the hub, and then came back later to check that that was actually what I wanted. And I've never ever had that happen at any of the other Disney parks. I'm going to say, as a side note, we did have one extremely poor experience at guest relations. That is unforgivable. It was a one-off, but honestly, that did sour my trip. The magic, I don't think is there though. The park feels like a really well-themed theme park, but not necessarily a Disney park, despite all the Disney IPs everywhere. I don't know what it is. I think the park could do with more characters and more street entertainment to help with the atmosphere. And then lastly, we have the food, which is very much Chinese focused. I get that, it's in China. They did have some Western options. They had waffles, they had turkey legs. There's also a good variety of snacks. Not huge, but there are some snacks. If you're looking for table service, you're out of luck. There's only one, and it's the character experience, so it is quite pricey. Tomorrowland had Western options, but the burger I had there was terrible. It just didn't resemble anything like the taste of a Western burger. It's probably the worst burger I've ever had. Personally, I'm a big rides and theming person, much more so than characters of food. So that's why this park is where it is. The downfalls though, there was quite a few things throughout my visit, but they were enough to mean that this park doesn't rank higher. So I've told you about the poor customer service experience at guest relations. The fast pass allocations were really weird. They just seemed to disappear too quickly. I don't like that they sell fast passes and they call them Disney Premier Access. I don't like how they manage the fireworks situation. We turned up at least 45 minutes before and the whole hub was closed. You couldn't get into the hub. It wasn't full, there was space, but it had been roped off. And then there's the guest behavior. The guests here do not have any concept of personal space. They get way too close to you in the queues. During the parade, the crowd was just rude. There were selfie sticks into the parade, and there was just a lot of pushing. Throughout the whole parade, all I could feel was pushing back and forth, left and right, and I've never ever experienced that at any other Disney park. If you've ever seen the switchbacks that you have to go through to get to the main entrance, and then again to get through security, and then to get into the park, that's enough to put almost anyone off. Luckily we stay at the hotels, so that wasn't an issue. I think essentially the feeling I got was that the park management don't trust you as a guest, so they need to put all these extra rules in place, but not for your benefit as a guest. It's so that you don't cheat the system, so you don't cheat out the park, but maybe they're right, judging by the way that people acted during the parade. And really, overall for me, it doesn't matter how beautiful the park is, how great the rides are, if the guests then sour the whole experience. And on that note, on number 6, we have Disneyland Park at Disneyland Paris. So this is a really tough one for me to rank. I worked there for a year and a half. It does have a real special place in my heart. It's where all my friends work. So I could honestly have put this at number 1. But I'm trying to be reasonable. So when Disney was designing this park for Europe, they knew that the local audience was really discerning and the park needed to be the highest quality park they'd ever built. And they achieved it. Disneyland Park at Disneyland Paris is, for me, far and away the most beautiful Magic Kingdom style park anywhere in the world. Yes, much more so even than Shanghai Disneyland. The Imagineers took everything they'd learnt from Tokyo Disneyland as well as the US parks, and they brought it to this park. But this wasn't going to be a clone of the American parks. Everything that was going to be built was going to be plussed. So this is how Space Mountain ended up being the best Space Mountain by a long shot. The park has the best Big Thunder Mountain. The Haunted Mansion is Phantom Manor. It's familiar, but it's completely original. There's the traditional but very unique and the best Pirates of the Caribbean. And I think what is still the most beautiful and most elegant Disney Castle. I was watching a video and someone said the lands at Disneyland Paris are the perfect version of those lands, and it's true. Main Street in Paris is the perfect Main Street. Tomorrowland is the perfect Tomorrowland, and I'm not talking about the actual rides in these places, I'm talking about the design. Frontierland, it is the most beautiful and the most elaborate that Disney's ever built. Adventureland, it's really something special, it's stunning. The Swiss Family Robinson treehouse in the middle is almost like this land's very own tree of life, and the caves and the walkthrough areas are just super elaborate here. And then finally there is Fantasyland, which is just beautiful. And the thing about this park is it's a park that feels familiar to American visitors and to visitors from Japan, but unlike Tokyo and Hong Kong, this isn't a clone. The actual lands are extremely different in theming. The transitions between the lands, I think, are better done here than in any other park. It does lack in complete unique attractions. There are none. But the attractions that are here are pretty much the best versions of them in the world, except a few from Shanghai now. The attention to detail is just stunning, like the dragon under the castle that they put there, and a lot of these things, most people on a day trip are never going to find or see. There is a lot of space for expansion though, and there's definitely some room for some original attractions. But sadly, there's not even anything in the pipeline at the moment after almost 30 years. As far as magic goes, the park is magical. I think it's more magical than Shanghai, and I think it shines especially around Christmas. Christmas at Disneyland Paris is magical. Also the summer, when it's hot and the park is actually quite crowded, it has a really nice atmosphere. But unfortunately, customer service wise, again, this is the French customer service, it is poor in comparison with all the other resorts. Like I said with Walt Disney Studios, it's not the cast members are rude, but they're more indifferent than in the other parks. Also, I talked about the bad guests at Shanghai Disneyland. The guests here are not as bad, but they do break a few rules. The main one is smoking. This has become much better in recent years, but smoking everywhere, it just ruins your experience. But on the other hand, the crowds certainly aren't pushing during parades. The park doesn't need to be implementing these long switchback queuing systems everywhere like Shanghai either. Food-wise, snacks are basically non-existent, so don't go there for those. All the table service restaurants I've tried there are fine, but they're not exceptional, and I've done pretty much all of them by now. They are very pricey, again, for what you get. The quick service options, they're mainly standard theme park fare, and it's not anywhere near as original as it could be. And again, France, it can do much better. It's known for fantastic food. And Disney does do much better, because at the Disneyland Hotel, by the park entrance, you have Inventions, which is one of the best buffets ever. California Grill, fantastic dining as well. And I just don't know why that doesn't extend into the park. So many people would probably rank this park lower, but remember I worked there for a year and a half. It's the first Disney park I ever visited, so it does have a special place in my heart. Next at number 5 we have Tokyo Disneyland. This was Disney's first park outside of the US. It was opened in 1983, and at this point Disney almost had 30 years experience of running theme parks, and it shows. The crowd flow, the management here is much better than at Magic Kingdom and Disneyland. They built really wide walkways, the hub is huge, and this is pretty much a clone of Magic Kingdom and Disneyland mixed together as far as the attractions are concerned. Japan wanted a very American feeling park, as close to a clone as possible, but with a few upgrades, a few changes. So World Bazaar replaces Main Street, and it's a big covered area. I think that works really well personally. Otherwise it's very similar. Big Thunder Mountain here is better than in the US parks. Jungle Cruise is excellent. They also have a few unique attractions. Monsters Inc., which is good but not incredible. The standout big attraction is Pooh's Honey Hunt, which, if you're a Disney fan, it basically justifies the visit on its own. And also now you have the brand new Beauty and the Beast area that opened about a month ago. The area looks impressive, the rides I'm not too keen on. Tiki Room is also completely different with Stitch, and I really enjoyed that. And unfortunately, there is no new Fantasyland here. The entertainment is fantastic in this park. They have a nighttime parade, they have a daytime parade, there's all these shows going on during the day. I am going to mark the parks down though for the astronomical wait times. Everything basically has long queues all day. And also the shows, because they have this weird lottery system, you can very much end up going there for 4 or 5 days and not seeing any of the shows because you never win the ticket to see the show. And lastly, the park is starting to feel a little bit dated. In terms of service, I said earlier that California had really good service, almost perfect, but the Japanese service is perfect. The cast members do not fail. They will do anything to make sure that your trip is better if it's within the rules. It is worth saying there is a language barrier at the park. You're not going to be able to have chats with cast members about what it's like working there. It took quite a while for the cast members to understand that I had lost my umbrella on Pirates of the Caribbean and not my brother. But despite that, that doesn't lose any of the magic of the park. After having spoken badly about the guests in the 2 previous parks, it's worth me saying the Japanese guests here are the best of any park. They're super happy to be there, they dress up, they're orderly. The park really helps with this because it has rules in place that make everyone's experience better, and these are followed by everyone. But it's for everyone's benefit, it's not for the park's benefit like Shanghai. It's just really nice being able to sit down. In fact, you have to sit down if you're at the front for parades, for shows, for the fireworks. It's really nice not to have people with cameras out or above their heads. It's really nice not to have children on people's shoulders. It just makes the park experience so much nicer. Food options are decent, but some of the Western options are not great. I had a very odd tasting burger in Tomorrowland, for example. You can see this is a recurring theme, but the snack game is 100% on point. Tokyo Disneyland and Tokyo DisneySea, yes, if you like snacks, this is the place to be. Why is it ranked better than Disneyland Paris? The variety of rides is better, the customer service is better, the guests are great, the magic is more there, and the food is better. The theming, nowhere near as good, so that's why I haven't ranked this higher up the list. At number 4 is Disney's Animal Kingdom. I surprised myself for ranking this park so highly. For the longest time, Animal Kingdom for me was a half-day park, and it still kind of is, 3/4 of a day park. But the reason that this park is so highly ranked is simple. It scores highly in everything. It's beautiful, everything is unique here, and of any Disney park in the world, this is the one that really transports you to a different place, away from the real world. From the moment you walk in, you see the Tree of Life, you can't help but be blown away, in the same way when you look down Main Street to the castle. Firstly, let me go through the attractions that this park offers that you can do in other Disney parks. Yes, nothing. Everything is original. Even Festival of the Lion King shares a show name with Hong Kong Disneyland, but the shows are completely different. There also aren't really any filler rides. All the rides are big major attractions: Dinosaur, Expedition Everest, Kilimanjaro Safaris, Cali River Rapids, Flight of Passage, Navi River Journey, and every ride is so different. None of these rides are anything like the others. And then you add in all the animal trails and the shows, and really this park, it can't be beat for originality. The magic here is different to in the other parks. It's not about Disney characters, it's not the Disney IPs, it's about the animals, it's about nature, and everyone loves animals. And being able to see a tiger 1 minute and then see a Yeti the next minute, where else can you do that? It is magical. In a different way to Magic Kingdom, but definitely more so than Disney's Hollywood Studios or EPCOT. Service is great across all of Walt Disney World, so this is on a par with the other parks. Theming wise, this park gets a solid 10 out of 10. There is nothing I could ask to improve. The Imagineers went to all these places around the world to make sure that they got it right when they were building this park. They went to India, they went to Africa, even the imaginary Pandora, they've got it right, it's perfect. There's nowhere here where you think, oh, Disney cheaped out. In fact, for so much of it, you think, how did they build that? Like Expedition Everest, the Tree of Life, and the floating mountains in Pandora. Finally, food-wise, this park comes second of the Walt Disney World parks, only behind Epcot. It could do with more table service restaurants to be open, but what is here is really varied and unique. So Tiffin's is excellent, Yak and Yeti is excellent, Satuli Canteen is excellent, and there's some very interesting menu items everywhere. And then you also have the more standard theme park fare at places like Restaurantosaurus. Overall, if I ever wanted to do a day to escape the real world, this would be the park I would head to. At number 3, we have the Magic Kingdom, so this is the top rated park at Walt Disney World. I think this is the most iconic of all the Disney parks. If you ask a normal person what Disneyland's castle looked like, they wouldn't tell you it's Sleeping Beauty Castle. They would say it's this one, Cinderella Castle. This is Disney's flagship destination. It is the most visited park in the world. The park is loosely based around the original Disneyland, but over the years they've definitely managed to differentiate themselves. So starting off with the attractions, Magic Kingdom has a really solid lineup. I do think you could spend 2 or 3 days at this park to do everything. It has all the Disney classics, so there's Pirates, Big Thunder Mountain, Splash Mountain, Haunted Mansion, It's a Small World, Peter Pan, Space Mountain, Jungle Cruise. And then it has things that the original park doesn't have, like Under the Sea, the Barnstormer, Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, the People Mover. The park has an abundance of attractions. There's lots of street entertainment and atmosphere. They've got all these daily parades and dance parties, and it's probably the best nighttime show Disney has ever made, with Happily Ever After. If you want original attractions, there are actually very few here that can't be found at another Disney park around the world. Really, it's limited to the People Mover, Carousel of Progress, Hall of Presidents, Monsters Inc. Laugh Floor, and the Barnstormer. And that's the thing about this park, it does feel out of date. Not as much as Tokyo Disneyland, probably because they've redone New Fantasyland, and Disney wants to keep the nostalgia there. Adventureland is tiny, compare it with Paris's, or what Shanghai has done with Treasure Cove, and it just doesn't compare. Plus, Magic Kingdom's Pirates, what's up with it? It has one drop. The park also has the worst Big Thunder Mountain. And then there's the old-timey shows, things like Tiki Room, Country Bear Jamboree, the Hall of Presidents, Carousel of Progress. I don't think they cut it with a modern audience. Disney fans love them. I think most of these are great, but I would rather they replaced a couple of these and built Indiana Jones Adventure, for example. So there is this feeling with Magic Kingdom that actually you could just go to Disneyland and experience 90% of the same thing, but this park definitely feels bigger and grander than Disneyland. In terms of magic and service, Magic Kingdom knocks it out the park. It's almost perfect. Theming wise, I would say this park actually comes third from the bottom after the 2 Studios parks. I'm not a fan of Tomorrowland in the American parks, like I said. It just doesn't feel futuristic. They cheaped out in Fantasyland, the facades for Peter Pan, Winnie the Pooh, It's a Small World. They're just these cheap, flat 2D things, unlike what you'll find at Disneyland Paris or Disneyland. Adventureland is an odd mix of styles. I don't think it works personally. Why is there a long walkway back to the park after Pirates and a moving walkway on a Haunted Mansion? It doesn't work thematically. It's still a very well themed park though compared to non-Disney parks, but the two parks above it are better themed in my opinion, and theming is really high up there for me. Also, it's worth mentioning, I think FastPass Plus really works well at this park in particular. Especially on the day itself. It's nice that you can book stuff in advance and know what you're definitely going to do. But on the day itself, I found at Magic Kingdom that if you refresh the app enough times, you're going to be able to get a fast pass for pretty much any ride. And that means that I've never had to wait in a long queue for anything ever at this park. And finally, food-wise, Magic Kingdom has a good variety of experiences. They've got the character dining in the castle, they have Be Our Guests, lots of snack options. Columbia Harbour House with the homestyle food I think is good, and the standard theme park options are everywhere, and of course the table service places. You can find pretty much anything you want here. None of it is really adventurous though, like you'll find at Animal Kingdom for example. Next at number 2 is Disneyland, the original park, the only one that Walt Disney actually saw built. I always really struggle between whether I prefer this park or Magic Kingdom more. As far as attractions are concerned, the lineup is very similar to Magic Kingdom, but as I said earlier, you do get the additions here. So you have Indiana Jones Adventure, the Matterhorn, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, Toontown, Davy Crockett's Explorer Canoes. I also prefer Pirates here, Big Thunder Mountain here, although Space Mountain is better at Magic Kingdom. Having said that, there are better versions of all of these in the other parks on the list, so it's not like Disneyland has the best versions. I also like that there is so much entertainment. All the shows, the daytime parade is better, it's usually on a couple of times as well every day. The nighttime parade exists, which is a start, and they have Fantasmic, which just kind of pops up out of nowhere. And then they also have the nighttime castle shows and the fireworks shows, but these are just never as grand as at Magic Kingdom. And I know that Disney can't ever touch Sleeping Beauty Castle, but I do wish that they could, and that they would, and they'd build something like Disneyland Paris is, or what they've done in Hong Kong Disneyland too. It's cute, it's quaint, Sleeping Beauty Castle has history, but it does look disappointing when you look down Main Street. If you've been to the other parks and are expecting to have this grand castle, especially with Magic Kingdom, it is disappointing. Yes, feel free to flame in the comments. Service-wise, I've had amazing magical moments on every visit to the park. The service, I think, is fantastic everywhere from my experience, and this is the original, so no other park has the feeling of magic and the feeling of history that this park has. I also really like how organic the character meetings are in this park. There's no huge queues, the characters just roam around, they ride on the rides, and they interact with people, and this really feels like it's where the characters live, in a way that none of the other parks can do. Theming wise, it's broadly very similar with Magic Kingdom, but without all of the caveats, so there's no weird travelators, there's no cheap flat facades, and it doesn't feel actually like Disney has cut any corners at this park. And all of this in a tiny footprint that almost gets as many visitors as Magic Kingdom. Because of that, it's worth me saying the walkways do feel crowded in this park more than any other because of its size. And food-wise, they've got table service, they've got snacks, they've got counter service. I love the whole Blue Bayou concept in Pirates of the Caribbean. It's great. But I will say the food is very American focused, and a lot of the food is actually fairly standard theme park fare. I get that though, that's their audience, it's Disneyland, it's an all-American theme park. And at number 1, the best Disney park in the world, in my opinion, is, surprise surprise, Tokyo DisneySea. This park rates highly for everything: attractions, customer service, theming, food. Attractions wise, DisneySea is kind of a best of everything park. You've got Toy Story, Midway Mania, Tower of Terror, with a really cool original storyline, Soarin', which is even more beautiful than Shanghai somehow. It has Indiana Jones Adventure 2, it has a clone of Disneyland Paris's Temple of Peril called Raging Spirits, but with much more comfortable seats and better theming. And then the park has all the unique attractions, like the Venetian gondolas, the Journey to the Center of the Earth, Aquatopia, Nemo and Friends Sea Rider, Sinbad's Storybook Voyage, Magic Lamp Theatre, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And then there's all the unique shows that the park has as well. The park doesn't have a traditional parade, but it has lots of shows on the lagoon, and it usually has a nighttime show. I also like rides that act as transportation, so I really like the steamer lines and the electric railway. I thought the steamer lines in particular were incredibly relaxing. I love them. So we actually have a full video on unique attractions at the Tokyo Disney Resort, which I recommend you watch after this. It's linked in the description below. Tokyo DisneySea is probably the park that has the most unique attractions, and the park is just beautiful to walk through. The theming is on par with Animal Kingdom. It might even be better somehow. There's an entire ship in the park. They have a beautiful Venice area that honestly looks exactly like Venice. The New York section looks like New York. The actual ride queues are universally fantastic. None of them are boring or empty looking. The thing this park does best, just like Animal Kingdom, is it takes you to another world. And it's a park where you could come for a day and just enjoy the surroundings, sit down, people watch, maybe see a few shows. You don't need to go on rides to enjoy the park here. And that's coming from someone who loves rides, and that's the main reason I go to the parks. If I do have a criticism, it's that the attraction wait times are just way too high. I'm a Disney Parks veteran, I know how to do parks, I've written a whole book on it, and I barely waited for anything, but everyone else also knows the tricks. Service and magic, well, what can I say? I said it all with Tokyo Disneyland. The Japanese service is unrivaled. It's perfect. Remember, there is that language barrier though. And finally, food. It's excellent, all around. Lots of variety. There's the beautiful Teddy Roosevelt Lounge, there's Italian places to eat, there's the SS Columbia dining room, where they've basically built a luxury cruise ship dining room. There's Magellan's, which pretty much everyone agrees is the best Disney theme park restaurant anywhere in the world. And there's the snacks. If you're a snack person, I've never snacked so much at any other Disney park as this one. And there's the perfect balance between counter service and table service as well. And if you said to me, Gio, we're closing down every Disney park in the world, you can save one, which would it be? It would be Tokyo DisneySea. It's the gold standard for theme parks. It's not just the best Disney park in the world, it's the best theme park in the world. And there we go, every single Disney theme park in the world ranked. I'm sure you have lots to say, so please leave your opinions down below, but be nice. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. This was by far the longest video I've ever made, so please hit the like button. It's free and it really makes a huge difference in recommending this video to other people. And subscribe as well for future Disney theme park videos. I've got lots more I'm working on at the moment. If you're planning a visit to any of the Disney parks around the world, do take a look at the travel guidebooks that we publish at independentguidebooks.com. There are links in the description to all of those, and also to the videos for the top unique attractions at Tokyo Disney Resort and Shanghai Disney Resort. There's also a link to another video which covers all the new rides that Disney is currently building around the world. I've been Gio, I hope you've enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.